You're not going to believe this story. Imagine a small, quiet school somewhere in the suburbs. Bell rings. Kids pour into the hallways, laughing, shouting, living their usual school lives. But in the middle of all that noise, there's one girl walking with her head down. Her name is Aliyah. She's 14, smart, kind, keeps mostly to herself. But here's the thing. Aliyah is different. She's one of the only black girls in a mostly white school. And lately, that difference has been making her life a living nightmare. It started with whispers, little comments in the hallway, looks. But soon, the bullying escalated. 3 white boys, older, bigger, decided Aliyah was their target. They shoved her books to the ground, blocked her path, laughed when she tried to speak up. Teachers barely noticed. Friends, too scared to help. Aliyah held her tears until she got home, determined not to show weakness at school. But inside, she was breaking. What those boys didn't know, though, was that Aliyah came from a family unlike any other. See, her dad wasn't just dad, he was a legend. A decorated Green Beret sniper, one of the most lethal in U.S. military history. The kind of man you don't cross. But Aliyah never bragged about that. She didn't walk around talking about her dad's record, his medals, his dangerous past. She was just trying to be a normal girl. Until the day they pushed her too far. It was a Friday. The sun was out, and the air smelled like fresh-cut grass. Aliyah was at her locker when the boys approached. This time, they weren't just here to mess around. They circled her, grinning, laughing loudly so everyone could hear. One of them snatched her phone out of her hand. Another knocked her books to the ground. "Hey, Black Barbie," one sneered. "What's the matter? Daddy not here to save you?" Aliyah's heart pounded. Her hands trembled, but something inside her snapped. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and said calmly, "Give me my phone." The boys laughed louder. "You want your phone back?" The ringleader smirked. "Come get it." But Aliyah didn't move toward them. Instead, she locked eyes with the boy, cool and steady. And then, very slowly, she smiled. "You know what?" she said, her voice almost gentle. "Go ahead, keep it. I was just about to call my dad." The boys raised their eyebrows, amused. "Your daddy gonna come here?" one of them taunted. "What's he gonna do? Call the principal?" Aliyah didn't blink. She kept smiling. "Not exactly." See, here's what they didn't know. Aliyah's father, Master Sergeant Marcus Williams, was no ordinary dad. He had served 3 tours overseas, survived missions no one talked about, and was known among his team as the Ghost, the sniper you never saw coming. He'd trained in every terrain, every weapon system, every kind of survival tactic. And while Marcus had retired from active duty to focus on his family, he had never lost his edge. Back at home, Marcus was just Dad. Soft-spoken, always smiling when he hugged his daughter, always patient when helping her with homework. But underneath that gentle exterior was a man forged in the fire of war, a man who had spent years protecting his country and, more importantly, his family. So when Aaliyah finally broke down that night at the dinner table, when the tears she'd been holding in for weeks finally spilled over, Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't make big promises. He just listened carefully, his face growing colder with every word. And then, very quietly, he said, "Thank you for telling me, baby. I'll handle it." The next morning, Marcus didn't go to work. Instead, he dressed in quiet, sharp precision. Black boots, jeans, a dark jacket. No military insignia, no medals, no rank. Just a man on a mission. Aaliyah watched him from the doorway, her heart pounding. "Dad, what are you going to do?" she asked softly. He turned to her, his expression calm, his eyes sharp. "I'm just going to talk." Those words. Just going to talk. But Aaliyah knew what they really meant. When Marcus said he was going to handle something, it got handled. At school, the day began like any other. Kids rushed to lockers, laughed in clusters, texted under desks. The three bullies lounged near the gym, talking loud, bragging about a prank they'd pulled on a younger student. They didn't notice the tall figure walking down the hall. They didn't even turn when the heavy boots echoed on the floor, until Marcus stopped right in front of them. For a moment, they didn't recognize him. He wasn't dressed like a teacher or a staff member, but there was something in his posture, something in the cold, controlled way he looked at them that made the leader squint, uneasy. "Can we help you, sir?" the ringleader said, smirking. Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked each boy in the eye one by one, holding their gaze until they shifted uncomfortably. Then, in a voice low and steady, he said, "You've been bullying my daughter." The smirk faded. "Who's your daughter?" Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Aaliyah." The air in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. The boys exchanged glances. "Look, sir, we were just messing around," the second boy began. Marcus raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "I'm not here to argue," Marcus said calmly. "I'm here to explain something, very carefully. You don't touch my daughter again. You don't look at her wrong. You don't even think about making her life harder. Do you understand?" The boys opened their mouths, but no words came out. Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower. "I want you to know exactly who you're dealing with. I'm not the principal. I'm not a teacher. I'm not going to give you detention. I'm a man who spent his life protecting people from men much tougher than you. And if you hurt my daughter again, you will meet the side of me I keep buried deep because I'm trying to live a peaceful life." He smiled slightly, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Do we understand each other?" The boys nodded rapidly, faces pale. "Good," Marcus said softly. He turned and walked away, leaving them standing frozen, unable to move. Back at home that evening, Aaliyah sat at the table, picking at her dinner. She was quiet, nervous. "Dad, did you—" she began. Marcus sat down across from her, smiling warmly. "Handled." Aaliyah let out a breath she didn't even know she had been holding. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. The next day at school, everything was different. Aaliyah walked through the hallways, her heart pounding, not with fear this time, but with something new. Strength, confidence. She saw them, the three boys. They were huddled by the lockers, heads low, whispering. When they saw her, they didn't smirk. They didn't laugh. They looked away. One even moved aside, giving her space to pass. For a moment, Aaliyah felt a surge of triumph, but then something more important settled in her chest. Relief. Not just because the bullying had stopped, but because her father had shown her, with actions, that she wasn't alone. That night, Aaliyah sat next to her dad on the couch. He was watching a quiet documentary, his big hands resting calmly on his lap, his military ring glinting in the light. "Dad?" she asked softly. "Yeah, baby? Were you scared? You know, when you were a soldier?" Marcus smiled faintly. "All the time." Aaliyah frowned. "But you were the best, right? The most dangerous sniper. People were scared of you." Marcus chuckled quietly. "That's not what made me strong. You know what did?" Aaliyah shook her head. He turned to look at her, his eyes gentle but firm. "Knowing what I was fighting for. And now, baby, it's you. You and your mom. That's why I walk away when I can. That's why I stay calm. But if anyone threatens my family, they meet a side of me they won't forget." Aaliyah leaned against his shoulder, feeling safe, feeling proud. Weeks passed. The bullying didn't return. The boys avoided her now, not out of fear, but with something more like respect. Slowly, Aaliyah found her confidence growing, not because of revenge or power, but because she knew she was supported, loved, and protected. She started speaking up more in class, joining clubs she'd been too shy to join before. And every time she felt a flicker of doubt, she remembered that quiet, powerful moment in the hallway, the way her father had stood, calm and unshakable, a living reminder of her own worth. And here's the thing no one ever tells you. Real strength isn't about fists or fights or showing off how tough you are. Real strength is quiet. It's the man who walks into a room and doesn't need to raise his voice. It's the girl who learns that she is never alone, no matter how hard the world tries to break her down. Aaliyah's story became a quiet legend at that school, not because she humiliated anyone, but because she stood tall, because she called on love, not violence, because she learned that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one who stays calm, speaks softly, and knows exactly what they're capable of. And as for Marcus, he went back to his peaceful life, watching over his daughter from the sidelines, smiling quietly as she grew into her own kind of warrior, not one forged by war, but by resilience, dignity, and the unshakable knowledge that she was loved.